Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Gangplank top lane. A lot of the variation comes in with the secondary runes you can run depending on the top lane matchups, but the rest of it's kind of set in stone. So starting off with the Keystone, it's going to be Grasp of the Undying. For every 4 seconds you're in combat, your next basic attack on an enemy champion will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, will heal you for 2%, and then increase your health by 5 permanently. This in combination with Gangplank's Q is like one of the best harass tools in the game, and it's so free and it's so brutal for the enemy too, because usually there's like a trade-off whenever you're trading a single target ability like this with the enemy, to where you take the minion damage and then they take the damage from the ability. But in Gangplank's case, it's only adding to the damage that his Q deals, which is usually oppressive early game anyways. It permanently is increasing his health, which that builds up pretty quickly too. Then it also deals magic damage. Since it deals magic damage, it makes it harder for the enemy to get value out of the 6 armor they're usually running from runes, and then even if they're trying to build armor on first recall, second recall, etc., it negates it just circumvents that a bit, and then the healing again is going to be like basically just offsetting the damage you would take from minions. And then once you start fighting with them in melee range, you still are going to be getting this value, as it's going to be easy to lead with it with your Q, and then once the enemy melee champion gets on top of you, then you can probably get your second proc as well. So it makes it very, very difficult, and it's so lame for an enemy melee champion to deal with, and that's going to be most of your matchups top lane. For the secondary rune, it's going to be Demolish. Kind of the only one you can get value out of this row from. With Font of Life, you get no value. Shield Bash, same. So with Demolish, you charge up a powerful attack against a tower, and then you deal more damage to it. And then it also scales on 35% of your max health, which is kind of whatever for Gangplank. You do get about 300 bonus health in a game, but that extra bonus damage to the tower is not really that crazy compared to a champion like Cho'Gath. So with Demolish, it's basically a reward for either killing your lane or pushing them out of or out of lane. As whenever you have the timing to get a turret play, if you have Demolish, it lets you get that turret play and then recall at a reasonable time in which you don't miss a wave by the time you come back top lane. If the enemy top laner TPs, it's just same sort of thing. It's a reward for the enemy making a mistake, and it's a harder punish in a lot of cases. And since there's nothing else for Gangplank to run, it's completely fine. Come mid to late game, if you end up split pushing, as Gangplank often does, it's also going to be giving you value. So it's a solid rune. It's not the highest value, but it's there. For the third row, it's going to be Bone Plating default. Your good options are all 3 of these, depending on the matchups. With Bone Plating, since you're usually going to be playing into melee matchups, it's going to be giving you more value. With Bone Plating, after you take damage from an enemy champion, the next 3 spells or attacks against you that you receive from them deal 30 to 60% or 60 damage less, and that's based on your level. And this is on a 45-second cooldown, so against champions like Jax, Irelia, Camille, etc., you effectively just have more HP against them. So they have to jump onto you, they have to break the bone plating, which is usually one ability plus an auto attack, which is huge against those champions. And then you're going to be building up grasp while it's happening, and then you can also just turn onto them. So you just have a lot of options, and then it also just makes their engage less powerful, especially in the early levels, where their advantage is if they can jump onto you and then get damage off. And to negate that entirely through a minor rune is so crazy. Second Wind is a better option against the top laners that have a poke ability, so or like a mid-range ability. Usually champions like Mordekaiser, Ornn, Rumble, where they can still damage Gangplank, but with Second Wind, after you take damage from an enemy champion, you heal for 4% of your missing health plus 6 over 10 seconds. So even if they're hitting you with their poke ability on cooldown, this in combination with Grasp, so long that you're trading your Q, you're going to be winning on the HP trade. And Second Wind continues to give you value throughout the entire game as well. Pretty similar to Bone Plating. Even though it doesn't have scaling based on your level, it will have scaling based on your max health. And then it's also based on your missing health, the amount that you restore is going to be based on your missing health. So come team fights or like clutch situations, the extra healing could make or break things. With conditioning, after 10 minutes, you gain plus 9 armor and magic resist, and then you also gain plus 5% on all of your armor and magic resist. Conditioning is kind of a niche case, but in non-lanes where the enemy laner like doesn't really matter, and you're gonna play out the lane, basically when you don't need the laning tools of Second Wind or Bone Plating, that's when you're going to be getting more value out of conditioning. So against champions like Kale, um, Kale's like the best case where they don't have a laning phase early, but they are scaling. Um, so you don't need second wind or bone plating against them to win lane. And with conditioning, having the extra resistances, you're going to be negating. Well, I guess Kale plus Akali, they deal mixed damage, and then you also just naturally win lane against them, so you don't need the laning tool. So having the extra resistances come 10 minutes, you can still be laning past 10 minutes, and then it's going to be giving you value for the rest of the game as well. So having the extra resistances is going to go further than the extra damage that you would heal from this or block from bone plating. And the value of those resistances is going to be multiplied whenever you start team fighting, as you'd be taking damage from more champions. And then any resistances you itemize is also going to be amplified from conditioning, and any bonus health you would buy would also be amplified from conditioning. So let's say you build Sterix, it takes more for the enemy to get through the shield and the bonus health offered if you have more resistances. For the last rune, it's going to be Overgrowth. You absorb life essence from every minion or monster that dies near you, and then you permanently increase your maximum health by 3 for every 8 minions or monsters absorbed, mostly minions. And then whenever you've absorbed 120 monsters or minions, you gain an additional 3.5% maximum health. This is like a reward for winning laning phase, basically. In combination with Grasp, it has some synergy, but it's mostly just going to give you a little over Ruby Crystal for free, as one of your early items is also going to be Phage, which is going to give you health, and then if you end up building the Sterix or something, you're going to get more value out of the bonus maximum health from Overgrowth, but it's mostly just a reward for winning the lane phase. If you're really playing for lane, running Revitalize is completely fine, as you're going to be getting better value out of your W and then your Corrupting Potion. With Revitalize, heals and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger, and increase to an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So basically, if you're below 40% health, your W is going to be healing you more, as it naturally does anyways. So if you're really trying to win lane, or if you're against like more burst-oriented laners, champions like Renekton, maybe champions that would run you down like Tryndamere or Aatrox, you'd be getting more value out of Revitalize in the laning phase. And then for secondary runes, you have about 3 options. You have Taste of Blood plus Ultimate Hunter. You have Mana Flow Band plus Scorch. You have Biscuits and Time Warp. The most common one's going to be Biscuits and Time Warp, and then the bonus or the adaptive resistances. The adaptive runes are always going to be the same, and attack damage, and then the resistances is going to change on your matchup. So obviously, if you're playing into Tryndamere, Renekton, etc., then you want to be running the armor. And then if you're playing into an AP matchup top lane, so Mordekaiser, Rumble, etc., you want the magic resist. But most matchups will be the armor. So starting off with the Time Warp, Tonic, and Biscuits, I think this would be your most default setup, as it works into most matchups. With Time Warp, Tonic, and Biscuits, the Biscuits are going to be giving you extra all-in potential. So for every 2 minutes until 6, you receive a biscuit. The biscuits restore 10% of your missing health and mana, and then consuming a biscuit permanently increases your mana by 50. So this ends up giving you around 200 mana, and then if you end up selling them, it ends up giving you around 90 gold, I think. And if you end up using them in the laning phase, they can help you in all-ins, as they restore 10% of your missing health. So whenever you're in an all-in, so long that you use this in combination with your corrupting pot, it's going to make the enemy, basically you're just trying to bait the enemy into like all-inning you at timings in which they don't actually have it. Because with Time Warp Tonic, consuming a potion or biscuit grants you 50% of its health or mana regeneration immediately. And then it puts the consumable on a lower cooldown, and then it also gives you 5% movement speed. So there's a lot of utility in that, as let's say Renekton's diving onto you when you have 60% HP. He lands the first part of his combo, but then you use your W, and then you use the biscuit and the corrupting pot. Like, you're just going to be right back to 60% HP, and then you can trade back onto him. And then in a more clutch situation, when it's down to like your last corrupting pot stack or your last biscuit, and it's going blow for blow, then you just simply have access to more health faster with Time Warp Tonic plus biscuits. The extra movement speed is also like pretty considerable, as a lot of the minigame of playing Gangplank into melee champions is that he has this short range advantage, and then they have the advantage once they get on top of him. But Gangplank has tools to slow the enemy with his barrel, or peel for himself with the oranges as the enemy gets on top of him. With Tybemore Tonic, you're going to be getting more value out of the 5% movement speed against champions like, again, Renekton, Tryndamere, Aatrox, where their whole goal, even Jax, where they're trying to run you down, and then if you can get away from them, then you're winning. Because if you're just a little bit, if you're just out of their auto attack range, then you're dealing more damage to them than they can deal to you naturally. So that's where you're going to be getting the most value out of the inspiration tree. And defaultly, if you don't know what to run, then that's your best bet. An okay option for the domination tree is Taste of Blood and Ultimate Hunter. I think you get the best value out of this in matchups such as Rumble Ornn, where you would be running Second Wind, and then even if they're hitting you with their other abilities, so Second Wind would be negating, say, Ornn and Rumble's Q damage. But if they're hitting you with, say, Rumble E or Ornn W, then they are out damaging you for your 1Q trade. With Taste of Blood, you help offset that damage and effectively give yourself more HP throughout the laning phase, because you can, if you are dodging those abilities, you can even just start walking up and auto-attacking those champions, and then if you're landing your passive on them and then a second Q, the Taste of Blood is going to be offsetting the damage they could retaliate with one auto-attack or just the minion damage you'd be taking in combination with Second Wind. And then with Ultimate Hunter, since you're battling against champions who are primarily based on their ultimate in Ornn and Rumble, having yours on a lower cooldown is pretty naturally useful, as if you're matching them in a side lane, it's good because yours is global, and then if you're matching them in team fights where, especially in solo queue, just having your ult up more often probably means that you're winning more fights. So you do have to stack it up, as Ultimate Hunter is in the bounty class, and with Bounty Hunter, you have to get unique takedowns to build up the bonuses from Ultimate Hunter. So even if you just have the 5%, not so bad, and then it's pretty easy. It's like one of the easiest champions to build up Ultimate Hunter, as you're usually ulting to get kills or assists, and then through getting kills or assists, you reduce the cooldown on your ultimate. So it's kind of like an oppressive laning tool, and then where you can stay and lane and globally ult, where the enemy champion has to TP to ult, you're also winning in that aspect. With Sorcery Second, this is a pretty niche case, and even when it is good to run, you might get more value out of Time Warp Tonic and Biscuits. But with Sorcery Second, your good option is Monoflow Band plus Scorch. This is going to add to your Q poke, and you should be looking to run this into matchups that like Gangplank already naturally wins, and usually just tanks with like no sustain. So I think the best examples would be like Poppy and Shin. They have no sustain, and they're looking to itemize armor very early against you. And through running Scorch, your damaging ability against an enemy champion sets him on fire, dealing bonus magic damage. So Scorch plus Grasp plus your Q is going to be dealing physical damage and magic damage to that person. And it's so free to spam that ability on cooldown that you don't even have to worry about your other abilities. So you can build up the Q poke against them because you're spending your entire mana pool for it. And then through dealing the extra magic damage, you should be able to whittle them down to a point in which you have lane advantage or you have an all-in against them. With Monoflow Band, hitting an enemy champion with an ability permanently increases your maximum mana by 25 up to 250. And then once you reach the 250, it restores 1% of your missing mana every 5 seconds. It's so easy to get to the 250 very early, and then once you have the percentage mana restore, you effectively like can't run out of mana. Especially like from minutes like 11 to about 17, where you could still be laning top lane and still just be spamming the Q on the enemy. So it is the greedier option, especially against champions like that. You might just be better off going like Time Warp Biscuits, as it gives you better 2v2 potential versus just viewing it in like a 1v1 situation. But those are the options. Those are the only runes that are important that I think are worth mentioning. Let's say the highest, let's say if you were to run something like Coup de Grace, Presence of Mind. With Presence of Mind, even though you could build up the mana with the ult, Gangplank doesn't need that extra mana. So it's completely luxury. And then Coup de Grace dealing 8% more damage to champions who are low. Gangplank doesn't need this damage either. You should really be looking to have your scaling in your itemization with Gangplank, as he's one of the hardest scaling champions in the game, versus through your runes. But yeah. So these are the default runes I'd recommend for Gangplank. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer literally all of them. And if you're interested in some support gameplay or just me talking about League of Legends, it's either one or the other, check out my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Gangplank's really strong. You should pick him up. He might seem kind of complex, but he's not that crazy. You can do it, man. Bye-bye.